Welcome to WiseTake.com. This is CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And yes, we're bringing you another NBA DFS podcast. It is Tuesday, February 7th, 2017, and we've got a small little three-game slate. Not much going on today. Last night was probably my worst night of NBA DFS ever. It was pretty bad. I mean, my cash game lines are pretty bad. If you listen to the podcast, you know I was big on Ilya because Detroit, normally they struggle against stretch fours, but I guess they figured that out, or at least against Ilyasova. He got into heavy foul trouble. In the beginning of the game, he had like three fouls, and he was like 0 for 5. So it's just a bad day. Just a bad day for him. Tobias Harris can keep up with him around the perimeter. I just figured that maybe they'd run lower out there a little more, and I was wrong. It happens, right? Sometimes we're wrong. It happens. I did have some guys that did good for me, like Wilson Chandler. He ended up doing well. Hernan Gomez. There was a few guys that I did like that they did okay out there for me. So it wasn't a complete debacle as far as guys. It was just the combinations that I made had at least one or two duds in them. So it wasn't a good night. It was a bad night for Mr. CK. Um, we're going to try to bounce back today. And obviously, it's a tiny little slate. So we got some time to work with here. We only got 3 games. Um, I thought it would be interesting to discuss some of the top performers from last night. LeBron James, 75.75 DraftKings points. The thing about LeBron is often there's a lot of times where I don't like to play LeBron when there's a large slate like that. And very rarely, but occasionally, like last night, it will burn me. The reason I don't like to pay that much for a guy like him is because typically his upside. Now, don't get me wrong. If one of the big three are out, if Kyrie or Love sits, that obviously changes everything, and LeBron becomes an awesome play. But when those guys play, I don't typically rush to play LeBron unless there's not a lot of options. And last night, I guess you could have made a case if there weren't too many options at small forward. But there's 11 games, so I'm talking about if there's like a 3-game slate like today. If there's even a 4 or 5 game slate and small forward is just that ugly, or there just aren't really a lot of studs, and it just kind of makes sense to pay up for him. And the reason that is because he's priced so high, especially on like FanDuel where he's like in the 11s. Um, LeBron doesn't typically put up these 70-point games like Westbrook or Harden. So I'll pay that money for Westbrook and Harden night after night because they show me that on a regular basis they can hit numbers close to that. Whereas LeBron typically is around the 50 to 60 range, which is fine. But when you know that's all you're getting in a GPP, you typically want to push and try to get a little more, right? So if LeBron can put up, on average, say he puts up 55, and you just paid, whatever he is, 10.5 or whatever the case is, instead of playing LeBron at 10.5 and just getting basically value for him, having him hit value, I'd rather find somebody that's maybe like in the 5s or 6s, maybe find 2 guys that are half his price that maybe put up 40 each, right? Because that is possible. It makes sense. So a lot of times I don't play LeBron because I'm concerned about the upside. Obviously, sometimes it burns me. Last night was one of those nights. I think he was the highest scoring player fantasy wise on the slate, at least on DraftKings. Russell Westbrook 70.5. For some reason, it seems like people have kind of gotten off the Westbrook train a little bit. I was a little surprised. I mean, I played him a bit. I just didn't really have anybody to put with him that to carry my teams. But I had him in a few lineups. But it's still Russell Westbrook, and he was in a phenomenal matchup against Indy. I guess the fact that there wasn't the real, the only real value that was so obvious was probably Hernan Gomez, and even him, he was up in the 5, so it wasn't even that valuable. Kyle O'Quinn was terrible. Lavoy Allen didn't really do anything, so there wasn't too much value, and I think that's why people had a hard time playing guys like Westbrook. But going forward, whenever you think Westbrook's going to be that low owned, I mean, it's always worth taking a shot on him. Kevin Love put up 67. I thought that was a phenomenal matchup. I heard somebody say earlier, "Oh, Markieff Morris is a great matchup for Love." How? How is he a great matchup for Love? Because he can cover him on the 3-point range. I mean, he didn't do a very good job of that last night. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bash anybody or get on anybody, but to me, it just seemed like. And listen, man, I was just as wrong with Ilyasova, right? Matter of fact, I was more wrong. It was way worse. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't mind Love. I had a lot of Love exposure, which is surprising that I didn't win more. I was surprised I didn't win more because I had a lot of Love, and some of these guys I had a lot of Beal, I had a lot of Love, and somehow I just Ilyasova really killed me. I'm gonna be upset about that dude for a minute. But like I always said, you gotta have the short-term memory. So I'm not gonna go straight too far from the oh well there. But anyway, Blake Griffin had a phenomenal day. Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, another just short of a 60 burger. Another the guy that I thought was interesting is Will Barton. Barton was a guy that I only threw in my GPPs, but wow. The thing with Will Barton is he's always a GPP play because a lot of times he'll run that second unit, especially now that Chandler is starting for Gallinari. Barton pretty much runs that entire second unit as far as scoring output. He's just going to chuck. He's just going to keep chucking. And he did that last night. And if the shot's falling, obviously he has immense upside. Now, if the shot's not falling, it's a very dangerous game to play with a guy like him who doesn't get too many peripherals, but on a regular basis. But if his shot is falling, man, like you see, he's got that 50-point upside. So it's definitely interesting. Jokic was disappointed. Disappointing. Jokic was disappointing. I played him a little bit. I didn't play him too much just because it was hard to play him at center on DraftKings because you had pretty much the only real tempting value was there. And again, it wasn't much. The only guy I really liked was Hernan Gomez, and he was in the fives. That's not even that cheap. He did fine. He got 30-something FanDuel DraftKings points. That's fine. But it didn't leave you with enough salary to pay up for these guys, so you kind of had to find it elsewhere. Dwayne Wade had a phenomenal game. For those of you that took a chance and played him, even though what's his name was out. Hold up a second. Oh yeah, even though Butler was out, I had a brain fart there. You think about one thing and then you're talking and then you're like, what am I talking about as you're talking? But yeah. So you took a chance and you played Wade because you thought Butler would be. Well, honestly, Wade was in a good spot regardless. I had a lot of shares of Wade, and it wasn't even about. I'm gonna take a chance here and just say that Butler's not gonna play. He was in a good spot. Even if Butler did play, he was in a good spot. The Kings are terrible against shooting guards. He was in a phenomenal spot. I mean, it's just like, but anyway. So just real quick recapping on a large slate like last night. I always find it tougher for me to play cash games unless a lot of value opens up. On these larger slates, I like to get as many studs as possible just because I feel like stars and scrubsy when it works is the easiest. You play like a John Wall who didn't have a good night but still had 45. You play a LeBron James who even on a bad night will get you 40, 50. You play a James Harden who on a low night will get you 40 or 50 usually. I mean, I do know he recently got 30-something. But typically, you're looking at, 50 at the worst. So on these larger slates where you have options, I feel like that's the time when people don't feel like they necessarily have to go stars and scrubs because there are so many other options. And I think that's a good time to go stars and scrubs because I don't think a lot of people are going to do it. And those studs that you're hopefully paying up for, you're hoping that, hopefully they're scoring way better than the field. So I think on a night like last night, cash games for me are always tough unless there's obvious value that opens up. And when I say value, I don't mean mid-tier value. I mean low-tier value. I mean cheap dudes. Like we thought we had with O'Quinn, which we didn't have, he dudded. But we thought we had with Lavoy Allen, which he didn't have, he dudded. That's the kind of level that I'm looking for. What we used to have with Hernan Gomez until this recent price increase. That's the method. That's the route that I like to go in these in cash games with these larger fields and cash games in general. I like to hear the injury news. I like to play the value guy, and then it's easier to piece line up from there. So last night I looked at 11 games. I knew it wasn't a good cash game slate for me, for the kind of player that I am. I knew it wasn't a very good cash game slate. Now, granted, it's not because it was 11 games necessarily. It's because there was 11 games and there was no clear-cut value options. There was no go-to guys that you can that I felt comfortable locking in there and just playing. Because even Hernan Gomez, while I had him in my cash games, I didn't feel all that comfortable playing him off the bench at 52 or 53, whatever he was. So even that was a little weird. You know what I mean? And whatever, dude. It's like I lost and a little upset about it. And I'm not upset because I lost. Obviously, if you play DFS, you're gonna lose more nights than not, most likely, or at least more lineups than not, most likely. And if you play multiple lineups, but what I'm upset about is the fact that I lacked the discipline. Right? All right. That's the name of the game. That's the internal thing. Aside from your DFS skills, aside from how you do your research, aside from what tools you use, I think that discipline is a major factor. And this and DFS and poker and sports betting and in casinos, discipline is key. You can have some fun, you can make a little money, but if it's not your night, it's not your night. And that's the same thing with people who chase. Well, they'll lose all their money in the seven. They're doing terrible in the 7 o'clock game, so they'll rush in and they'll pound up those 8, 9, 10 o'clock slates, and I feel like most of the time they'll end up making it worse, unless you're really good at short slates. But if you're really good at short slates, why are you even playing the main slates? You should just be playing those short slates anyway. Um, anyway, we're gonna move on and talk about today's interesting slate here with our whopping 3 games. So we're gonna start off going over some injury stuff because I think that is obviously relevant. It's tough. It's tough today, and we'll talk about why. Mainly because James Harden is so freaking expensive, but we'll talk about that. So Karis LeVert is doubtful with a knee against Charlotte. Quincy Acey is also doubtful with an ankle. And in that same game, Ramon Sessions is out with a knee injury. And obviously they're hosting Brooklyn. And then Cody Zeller is questionable with a quad. So I think with Karis LeVert out, and I'm going to talk about cash games just because I think that on a night like tonight, cash games is what play your GPPs, go ahead, but you're going to have to get really contrarian. Think about it, if there's 5 figures or maybe even 6 figures worth of people playing GPPs on a 3-game slate, you're going to have to find some pretty off-the-wall type plays to make it happen. And I could see merit on a night like tonight. Well, I don't know. It depends because his price is so. Anyway, you're going to have to really reach and grab. So for me, this is a night where I'm probably going to go cash just because I think that you got a guy like James Harden who you can kind of plug in there on this kind of slate. I don't really see anybody else who can kind of match his production. So in GPPs, I see merit to fading a guy like Harden. But in cash games, I don't. And that's tough to say, even without a lot of value today. But anyway, so with Karis LeVert, I think on the Brooklyn side, obviously Brooklyn comes with risk. And the reason Brooklyn comes with risk is, one, they're pretty deep, meaning you don't always know which guy is going to go off. They have so many different guys who are so bad yet can go off for good nights that it makes it really hard to gauge. Like, you don't really know where to go there. Does that make sense? It's like, I don't know. It's just like, okay, so Karis LeVert is out. So Karis LeVert recently missed, I think he missed a game, maybe 2. And he missed his last game against Toronto. So he sat versus Toronto, and Kilpatrick got 32 minutes, which is far more than he's been playing lately. He didn't do much with those minutes, but he still played the minutes. Do I feel comfortable putting a guy like Sean Kilpatrick in cash games? Absolutely not. I don't feel comfortable. Well, because Harden is over 13K today, do I have to? I might have to. Now, here's the kicker. If Karis LeVert plays, obviously I'm not going to do it because I think Karis LeVert is going to cut back into Kilpatrick's minutes, and Kilpatrick's going back down to the 26, 19, 17 that we've seen him playing lately. If Karis LeVert is out and we think he's going to get another 32 or so minutes, then I absolutely think you do put him in cash, right? Because minutes is money, right? And he's cheap. He's only 4,300, and projected points per minute. His projected points per minute is 0.91. So you can expect 0.91 points for every minute he plays. So if he plays 30, he shouldn't have a problem in his value at all, right? So that's what I'm talking about. On these short game slates, it's you got to play the obvious guys, right? Like I feel like you kind of have to play like Harden, right? Because who else? Now listen, in GPPs, if you want to fade him, be my guest. And I'm not telling you, like I said, in GPPs, you're gonna have to get super creative. You're really gonna have to get super creative in GPPs today. But in your cash games, if you fade Harden, even though he's 13-3, now listen, 13-3, like he has to hit like 75 for you to hit value, for you to hit like 5.5 his value. That's a lot of points. Now he's playing Orlando. I'm not worried about the matchup. Orlando's been playing at a faster pace lately, and they've been pretty bad defensively. And he's home. So you're figuring even in a blowout, you're assuming he'll put up, 55, something like that. So the concern is, can you get away with fading Harden in a cash game? Is there anybody else on this slate that has the chance to put up his numbers without crushing you? It's possible, but there's nobody that I'd be willing to put like that much risk on. Because I feel like in a cash game, for me anyway, in cash games, I'm risking more, right? I'm doing like a $25 double up, or I'm doing a bunch of head-to-heads, or, either way, say if I'm playing like $300 that night, just for example, right? Probably 200 of that, at least 200 of that is probably going into cash games, and then 100 will go into GPPs. Notice I don't always play cash, but when I play cash, that's kind of like your chance to kind of build your bankroll, right? Like with the GPPs, I mean, you keep playing them, you're hoping for the big win, but cash is kind of where you're supposed to be building that steady little income, or that steady stream of bankroll, right? So again, going back to Harden, if you fade Harden today, who else can you put in his place that could potentially? Now, listen, obviously injury news is very important. Damian Lillard I think he's probable, but if Lillard was to not play, McCollum would be in a phenomenal spot. So you'd have to play a guy like McCollum, right? Can you fit McCollum and Harden together? Yeah. Is it going to be harder after that? Yeah. So as much as we might not want to play these Brooklyn guys because we think Brooklyn is terrible, and they are, worst team in the league, and we think that it's too hard to figure out, on a night like tonight, you kind of have to because there's not a lot of value. So that is the Brooklyn guys, unfortunately, pretty much are your value. Staying in the same game on the Charlotte side, I think there's some interesting takes here. So the biggest injury news obviously is Cody Zeller, right? If Cody Zeller plays, I think Kaminsky is still in play because he's going to play some 4 and 5. I think Kaminsky's in for a big minute bump regardless, but he's playable because he's cheap, Kaminsky. If Zeller sits, Kaminsky is like, he's the nuts, dude. He's 4,700, and he's going to be playing mega minutes. Now, obviously, we know about that trade. They recently traded away, Hibbert and Hawes for Plumlee. I don't understand why they did it. I mean, I'm sure they have their I would assume they have their reasons. I just don't really see, like, you trade 2 crappy players for 1 crappy player. And I don't want to offend you. If you guys like Hawes and Hibbert, I'm sorry, or Plumlee or whatever, my bad. But I'm just talking from, like, realistically. And don't get me wrong, Hawes has some fantasy production, but they traded him to a team that has Henson and Monroe. So what do they have? 4 centers now? It's just weird. I don't understand this. I just don't understand the situation. And you have Jabari at the 4, so you're. I guess maybe they could move him to a 3. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I couldn't really figure out why they did that. But like I said, I'm sure they have their reasons. I didn't care enough about those players or those teams to look deeper into it. But listen, back to the point. If Cody Zeller is out, which he's questionable, so we're gonna have to pay attention. If Cody Zeller is out, Zeller sat out against Utah, and Kaminsky saw 32 minutes. He got 24 DraftKings points against Utah with Gobert down there. That's not bad for a guy like Kaminsky. It's really not. Kaminsky is his projected points per minute is 0.92. So what is it? A tenth of a point higher? Or, I'm sorry, not even lower though. Very, very close to Kilpatrick's production. Kilpatrick is obviously a lot cheaper. So if you're going to play Kaminsky at 47, right? If Zeller's out, and even with Zeller out, what is he going to play? 32 to 33 to maybe 34, right? He's not going to play full 40, right? So if you're willing to play Kaminsky at 47 with what's his name out, with Zeller out, then why wouldn't you want to play Kilpatrick at 4,300, whose projected points per minute is 0.91 in a scenario where maybe LeVert is out? And LeVert is doubtful. Zeller's questionable. That's the thing. So like I said, it may pain you. It may make you feel uncomfortable. But on these kind of slates, you got to go with the guys who are going to play the minutes, even if they're ugly. So let's just say hypothetically, I'm here on DraftKings now, and I'm gonna throw in Harden and just see. So that the average remaining player with Harden in there is what, 5,242, right? So say I plug in a guy like Kaminsky. Say I plug in a guy like Kilpatrick, right? It brings it up to 5,540, right? 5,540. So it's a little bit of room to work with. But then who are you looking at? You're looking at guys, and staying with that Brooklyn-Charlotte game. And the reason I'm staying there is because it seems to me like that's where most of the value appears to be. And I could be wrong there, but just off the naked eye from what I see, that seems to be the place of value, especially with Darren Williams questionable, a game-time decision. He may come back. So Kilpatrick, Harden, and Kaminsky, that's the guys I have in there now, right? And I have some room here. Sticking now, if Zeller, that's the thing. If Zeller, that's why injuries are so important. If Zeller is out, that opens up more opportunities for other guys. I think Marvin Williams at 4,800 becomes interesting. I think Michael Kidd-Gilchrist at 51 is a good play regardless, so we'll lock him in there. But then what you have happening is, so currently I have Harden, and then I have 3 players from one game, right? And that's just where my value is. It's could I mess around and find another guy from Brooklyn? I could. Do I want to go through all that? No. I think if Zeller's out, Brook Lopez becomes a great play because I don't see Kaminsky covering him. But if I put Brook Lopez and then I'm down to 52, that's pretty. I'm not getting another one of those. Like I'm not gonna be able to afford unless I could find another value piece. I can't afford to pay up for like a McCollum, or it looks like I'm stuck going with like a Beverly or an Elf or something like that. Even if Yogi at 6K is probably too expensive at this point. Leaves me 48 for power forward and util. But look, I'm not going to be able to play Batum, who's in a great spot. I'm not going to be able to play Kemba, who's in a monster spot. I'm not going to be able to play Harrison Barnes. Well, actually, yeah, I'm not going to be able to play him either. So it's tough. This is a slate where we're pretty much begging for value here. We're going to be hunting for value. We're going to be begging for value. And I don't see a world like decent value. Montrezl Harrell, 3,400. I think that's interesting. He's going to play at least 20 minutes. He's gotten 15, 20, 20. We know what his upside is. Orlando was terrible against centers. And Harrell's a good correlation play with Harden because most of Harrell's buckets come off assists. Harden is the assist leader. So there's options. There are some options that open up. But you really got to dig. You really got to look. And you got to play guys that you know are going to get minutes, even if it's a little ugly. So let's get out of that game. Let's move on. Nene is probable. That kind of takes away from Harrell a little bit. I know I just talked about him, but Nene is probable. So that kind of takes away. So maybe you look at a guy like Capella, but Capella's 5,300. So you're paying for it. That's, Andrew Bogut is questionable with a hamstring. That doesn't affect me too much other than whether or not I want to play Plumlee. Not that I'm afraid of Bogut, but Bogut is a better rim protector than Dirk, let's say. That's the other thing. We got to see if Dirk plays or not. If Dirk doesn't play, I think Harrison Barnes becomes a smash play. I like Harry Barnes anyway. I definitely like him today. But if what's his name? If Dirk is out, he becomes a straight smash play. So I think that's interesting. D Will's questionable. And speaking of D Will, JJ Barea is out. We'll get that out the way. D Will's questionable. So if D Will's questionable, if he plays, I don't really want to play him because he's coming back from an injury. I'm talking about cash, right? If he doesn't play, I don't think I could pay 6 for Yogi. And I love Yogi, man. I really want to. And we saw what he did against Portland last time. It's just, can I afford to pay 6K for that guy? Because I don't think Yogi's not going to put up 50 every day. It's just that kind of player he is. Not as a rookie anyway. Maybe one day. I mean, he's certainly a great scorer. But it's not going to happen every day. So at 6K, if he gets you 30 points, which I think is kind of that's more realistically what I would expect from a guy like Yogi. When he's playing these mega minutes, I would expect him to be around 30 to 30, and 30, 32, 33, somewhere in that range. So for 6K, where's the upside there? Because at that point, he's basically just hitting value, barely, right? So as much as I love Yogi, I really do, man. I love Yogi. I loved watching him in Indiana. Good times, when I watch college basketball, man. Some of these, you watch some of these guys that are good, and you see them go to the pros, and they struggle, and they finally catch their break. And you're just like, yeah, man, I knew he was going to be good, man. I watched that dude, you get a little bit of that. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, anyway, back to the point. As much as I would love to play Yogi, and I want to play Yogi, and I love attacking the guards against Portland, he just doesn't really have his value today. Just because of the fact that you're paying so much for Harden, how are you going to fit him in? It becomes difficult. It really does. So, we'll see. And if Zeller plays, he becomes the play to me. I mean, he's cheaper than Kaminsky. If Zeller plays, I know Zeller's coming back from injury, and that makes you worry. But at 45, he's cheaper than Kaminsky. He's got a great matchup against Brook Lopez, who doesn't rebound. So that's the big thing, I think, for the Charlotte guys is you have a lot of rebound upside for these value guys. So, yeah, okay. Kemba Walker is in a nut spot. Batum is in a nut spot. I get all that. But if you're going to play Harden, you're probably not going to be able to fit those guys in. Not unless an immense amount of value just opens up right before lock, which is possible. I mean, there are some guys you could take a chance on, like, Bismack Biyombo, 3,100. You could certainly take a chance on these guys and pace up spots and just hope that, something happens. You can. But it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. But I don't see a world where I'm drifting away from Harden here in cash games, just because I don't see a player that I am convinced that I would feel safe replacing his points with. Now you can try the balanced approach. That's just my approach. Certainly, you can certainly try the balanced approach and just hope that people who paid up for Harden won't be able to afford to play some of these other guys. But me personally, I kind of feel like because Harden's so expensive and because guys like Kemba Walker are playing and Batum, I wouldn't be surprised to see people just not really play Harden too much and just try to middle it out, because a lot of people don't like hunting for value. They don't like waiting for value. They don't have time to. Like right now, if I was setting a lineup now and then I had to be somewhere like work or whatever the case is, and I had to be there all day and through lock, and I'm not going to get a chance to edit my lineups, I'm not going to put Kaminsky or Zeller in there. There's questions I don't know about. So if I'm not willing to play this value, that means I'm going to have to play the guys that I know for sure are playing. So I'm going to have to play guys like Kemba Walker and Batum. And if I get those guys, I'm not going to be able to afford Harden. So there's a bunch of different ways to approach it. Small game slates are interesting, and this one is especially interesting because James Harden is ridiculously expensive. But again, it's a short slate, and on short slates, I don't mind paying up for guys because you're buying those points, and there's typically not too many options or places to go elsewhere to get those points. So in a situation like this, I don't see, if Harden does go for 60 or 70, I don't see another guy on the roster that could do it. Now that could change. Like I said, Damian Lillard is probable, but if for any reason Damian Lillard doesn't play, I think McCollum becomes a phenomenal play. He's in a great spot at that point. But yeah, we got some. It's an interesting slate. It's only 3 games, but it's going to be interesting how you play it. I'm not going to be too big on GPPs today. I don't like to spin my wheels and start playing guys that I don't even know who they are. So I'm going to stick with cash today. I'll probably throw one GPP lineup, and honestly, I'll probably just make a cash lineup and put it in GPP and just see how it does. Just because you always want to have the hope, right? You always want that hope of taking down a big GPP, even if it's unrealistic for that night. So like on a night where I'm putting in maybe 30 or 20 lineups in the $4 large GPP, I'm trying to win it. But on a night like tonight, I'm putting in the $4 just to see how it goes, just because. But really, my focus is going to be in cash. I'm going to make one lineup tonight, most likely, and I'm going to fire it out and just hope it does well. And if not, I believe we have a big slate, right? I don't even check really for tomorrow. I'm assuming we have a big slate tomorrow. But yeah, in closing, for this slate-wise, pay attention to the injury news yet again. That's not anything new. I say that every week, every podcast. Pay attention to injury news. See what opens up. Check to see if Dirk's playing. If Dirk's not playing, I think Harry Barnes becomes a must-play. That's pretty much it. And like I said, I'm playing one lineup. I'm playing cash, and I'm not fading Harden. But that's just me. You can do whatever. Anyway, guys, if you haven't checked out WiseTake.com yet, the new design is up. It looks awesome. I'm loving it, man. It took me a while. It took me a long time to get that going. I had a lot of issues, doing all that. I'm not really too techie with that kind of stuff. So it was tough, but it's up and running. We want to get those forums going. We're trying to build a DFS community here. You understand? A DFS community. That involves communication, not just from me, but communication from you. So I'm going to try to be creative here, and maybe we'll run some contests out of the forum just to get people posted and all that. I do have some bad news for our members. The good news is it's still free. The bad news is when I uploaded this new site template and all that, all my user information, all the members, all you guys, your information got deleted. So you have to make an account from scratch, unfortunately. But I do think that the way the site is set up now is better anyway. Better storage, better security. The design is obviously a lot better. So hope you guys don't mind. Sorry about that. But again, look, all the tools are still free. You just have to make an account. And making an account is free. It takes very little time. We just want to get a community going. We just want some members to talk. Our projections are up there. Our cheat sheets are still going. The odds charts, all our tools are still there. And we're going to try to get some stuff incorporated for baseball once baseball comes. Right now, obviously, we only have NBA tools. But we're going to try to make it for both NFL and MLB as the seasons come up. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. I appreciate you guys watching. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that, all you guys who have already. And if you're listening on Podbean, give us a follow. Maybe leave us a little comment. Tell us if you like the show. Also, if you're listening on iTunes, subscribe to the channel. Review us, rate us, bump us up those charts, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build something here. But anyway, thanks again for listening. As always, I really, really, really appreciate you guys all the time. And good luck.